What's going on, everybody? As many of you probably heard already, Anita Baker was scheduled to perform at State Farm Arena in Atlanta on May 11th, which was Saturday, right? This past Saturday, the day before Mother's Day. Many people went out and got their outfits and, went to dinner, paid $50 for parking locally, and all the things that people do to get prepared for a major show. To find out minutes before the show that the show was canceled. So right now, Anita Baker's caught up in the real life rapture for real. But I'm going to give you all a little bit of context on both sides as a person who promotes shows and puts shows on a major level, and then also as an entertainer and performer and a person who provides services. So there's two different ways to look at this. I'm going to give you the artist's standpoint first. Generally, when a promoter engages an artist, a major recording artist, there's a contract, right, for services. The contract, just for argument's sake, let's just say it's $100,000 that the artist is going to get for performing this show. In addition to the fee, the promoter has to pay for catering, for hotel accommodations, ground transportation, and airfare for the band, the artists, and management, and everybody that's on that particular contract, right? So it could get costly. But when you have an event center, such as the size of State Farm Arena, making such an investment is really not a bad deal because there's a lot of profit that could be made on the other end. So the promoter then says, okay, yeah, he agrees to that number and he advances a 50% deposit to the artist for the fee of 50 grand because we're talking about 100 grand, right? At that time, he also has to book the flights, book the hotels, catering and all that stuff kind of happens on closer to the show. But the airline and hotels, those things generally need to be in place during somewhere near the same time that you book the artist. Because you don't want, as a promoter, to get closer to the event and you book a flight for 10 people, right, a week before. As you know, the prices get high. So you want to book it in advance. But anyway, so the artist receives that 50% deposit. And at that point, you now, as a promoter, have the right to start promoting the show. You go out, you do your media, you do your radio spots, TV, whatever else. Generally, in that contract, the artist will request to be paid either in cash or bank wire transfer. And if it's on a Saturday, you know that bank wire transfers don't happen on Saturdays, so then it would have to be on that Friday. Or a bank check. That's generally the acceptable methods of payment for the artist. Generally, the artists themselves come in the night before or sometimes early the day of. The band, the management, the MD, which is the musical director, all are coming in at around the same time as well. And the sound check normally happens earlier in the afternoon, at which time it's usually in the contract that 50% balance is to be paid in whatever means or method that you agreed upon at Soundcheck. That's usually the deal. So Soundcheck, again, happens at a certain time. The musical director, the band, and the road manager usually attends that Soundcheck. Most often, the artist is not there. They do show up. Let's just say the show is scheduled for 7. They may show up around 5. Now, I'm not certain. I wasn't there. I don't know what happened, but I've seen this happen many, many times where a show is promoted, the artist has gotten their money, they're in town, and then at the sound check, the money's funny. The money ain't there. And certain artists, they'll give you a certain amount of time to try to come up with it. And if you don't, they get back in their car that you paid for as the promoter, go back to the hotel that you paid for, and take a flight out the next day that you paid for, right? That's generally what happens. Now, some artists, and I've seen an artist in particular, and I'll tell you who it was because I had the opportunity to be videographer on this particular show, and it was Howard Hewitt. Howard Hewitt got paid his money, the deposit, but when he got there, the money was funny. And Howard decided to not disappoint his fans, and he came out right at the beginning of the show. He let the audience know that he didn't get paid his money, but he valued his fans, and that he wasn't going to do a full show, but he was going to do the hits, the songs that they enjoyed, just so that they don't feel cheated by him, which was major. Now, obviously, the audience were not happy that they didn't get a full show, but their anger was not directed towards Howard Hewitt. It was directed towards the promoter, as it should be, right? And people appreciated him for doing that. He got on a plane and went back home. Now, not every artist is going to look at it that way. And I'm not certain that this thing with Anita Baker had anything to do with money, but I can tell you what gives me the indication that it had a lot to do with money. The venue, which is State Farm Arena, they're innocent in this whole thing, right? So you have three parties. You have the promoter who books the talent and books the venue. You have the artist who agrees to do the show and they show up. And then you have the venue, sound, lighting, and all of those things. Now, it's possible that the promoter didn't pay the venue either, right? And if the venue didn't get the balance of their money, because they pretty much have the same thing. You give us a deposit and then you pay the difference showtime. Now, a lot of times they will give you enough time before showtime to come up with that balance. So somewhere along the line, I feel that money had a lot to do with this, right? Because the excuse that they gave, right, or the reasoning that they gave was very ambiguous. Unforeseen occurrences. Well, what's unseen? Either that somebody got sick and ill, somebody passed away, and these things do happen, or the money was funny. And more often than not, it's the money, right? The artist is in town, the venue is open, and the show don't happen. You figure it out. But my point is this. I understand artists of Anita Baker's caliber, right? Been doing this for a long time. And certain artists just get tired of the games that a lot of promoters play. And they play this game where we'll promote the show, get the artist there, and then pressure them into going through with the show so that they can collect their money at the box office, because the promoter can't get paid until the show happens. When the show happens, he can start to settle with the box office while the show is happening, depending on how we set it up, right? But anyway, at the end of the day, the promoter can't get paid back until the show starts. So if you held up the money in hopes that the artist decides to perform anyway, well, the show happened and you get your money, and you don't pay the artist that 50%, that additional 50,000. So in essence, you end up really getting over. And a lot of artists are like, nah, we ain't dealing with that. We're going to shut it down, because they don't want other promoters in other states to hear that, you know, they're settling to do shows even when they don't get paid the full amount, because other promoters might get the notion to do the same thing. So they want to shut it down. So in that regard, I understand the artist's standpoint, and not everybody is going to take the same approach that Howard Hewitt did. However, the public relations of this for Anita Baker is god awful. And I'm going to let you hear a lot of what's out there, what people are saying about this show, the cancellation of the show.
I'm pissed. Anita bald-headed ass, they canceled the concert.
As you see, there is a public relations part of this that an artist has to look at, because at the end of the day, this is business, right? And you are in the business of pleasing your fans, not the venue, not the promoter, but your fans. And in this day and age, when social media is the way it is, it's tough. And you have to make some tough decisions. And this decision was made for whatever reason to cancel the show. That's never a good thing. Even when you possibly lose money as a promoter, you have to go through with it when you're that close to a show. You just do. So you have to have the bandwidth to withstand the losses. Even when you see a loss happening, you got to hope to see and live to see another day. We don't know what the real reason was, right, behind this whole thing. But my issue is that there is nothing being said by either the promoter or the artist as it relates to the real reason. And therefore, you leave it up to your fans, right, to try to figure out what happened. And there are people who are still trying to ascertain how they're going to get their refund. So these are the issues that are left lingering when an artist decides not to do a show. So as I said early on when I first started, there are a lot of sides to this. Now, the venue, we didn't talk about them, right? They get left whole in the bag because the artist has 50%, right? The promoter saved 50% of his money because he might have just said, hey, you know what? I'm gonna cut my losses right here and I'm done. And now the venue loses because they don't get the balance of their money and they still got to pay staff and people that they booked for the show. And on top of it, they're now responsible, meaning, you know, them, the ticket holders, they have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that these people get refunds on their tickets. So it's loss, loss, loss all the way around. But the people who lose the most are the fans. This is the dirty business of entertainment, and it happens more often than you all think. And I just wanted to give y'all like a different way to look at this. I know many of you are pissed, and I would be too. The fact of the matter is that these things do happen, and hopefully all parties involved will come together and work this thing out for the benefit of the fans.